people will come. So welcome all to the Blab, who is also watching from outside the session. This is Wines of Italy Blab, and I'm Caterina as usual with the blog Great Wine Adventures that you can see in the link here in the chat. And tonight we have Riccardo Margheri as a guest, who is a sommelier, not from Florence, but I think from...
No, I live in Livorno, but more than sommelier, I think the more appropriate definition is serial drinker.
Okay, well, that's even better.
Okay.
And then we also have Livio, which you see only half the face, who is the usual co-host almost, and also sommelier. So tonight it will be more a discussion in general about whatever we feel like. So Gregory is here. Gregory is a guy from Britain, and he's a digital marketer, but I think he's also kind of wine, half winemaker, half wine digital. So he knows a lot about wine too. And we're waiting for a bit more people, but I think they will join us soon. So I was thinking about that you could start by presenting yourself, a bit about who you are, what you do, what's your idea about wine in general.
Well, I am a sommelier, so if you define me as sommelier in some way right, because I've graduated like as a sommelier, but this doesn't describe 100% the things I do in the wine world, even because I've never worked as a sommelier. I've never worked in a restaurant, in a wine bar. I'm the kind of guy that make restaurants and wine bars work a lot, because I eat and drink a lot, but I've never worked for them. In the world of wine, I do several things. I make tastings for an Italian wine guide. That is the so-called Guida Vini Buoni d'Italia of Turin Club and De Agostini. That is particular because it only cares as a choice to wines made with Italian autochthon grapes. That means that if a wine has got kind of 5% of Cabernet Sauvignon, maybe it's fairly good, but we do not rate it, just to distinguish ourselves from the other guides. I hold seminars and educationals on behalf of Association of Wine Producers, like the Consorzio Chiaro Classico, even for professionals, of course. I teach in the sommelier courses of the FISR Association. I organize and more often guide the wine tours, not only in Tuscany. I live in Tuscany, I live in Livorno in the coast of Tuscany, but I've brought tourists in many different wine regions, even outside of Italy. I write for websites like Corriere del Vino, more lately even Wine News. I seldom select Italian wine estates for the export, because sometimes I am requested by wine importers to look for a special kind of wine, and I suggest estates that might be feasible for them, all these things. So okay. I'm very often with a glass in hand.
Yes, I've seen that on the wine taste at the wine tastings.
Okay.
So I wrote about today that it would be about grape varieties, but I think you can choose if you want to talk about, as we discussed before, about some grape varieties, or if you prefer to discuss more about international wine, and then head over to wine and social. You can just set.
So I can talk about whatever I want.
Yes.
That's great.
And then Livio can jump in when he feels like it and make a question or whatever.
Well, we have been discussing about several possible arguments relating to
yes.
But I have suggested grape varieties because, to me, one of the most fascinating and undervalued features of the Italian wine, that of course it's trendy, it's famous abroad, it's very important on certain markets, whatever. But to me, it's not properly known as it should be and as it should deserve by foreign consumers, because one of the most fascinating features of Italian wine is that there are literally hundreds of different wine varieties, and many of them, I don't want to say all of them, I would like to underline, I'm not the one that will tell you Italian wine is the best of the world and all the rest is just rubbish, not at all. But in Italy, there is definitely the most incredible variety of wines.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Wherever in the world. And this
Yes.
to me is really fascinating. And
so if we go outside of Tuscany, because I think we've discussed Tuscany very much here in the Blab, so if you would talk about a couple of grape varieties that you think are particularly interesting and perhaps not very easy to discover for a person who is not an Italian.
Well, first of all, I would like to tell you something, that if there are foreign wine lovers that visit Italy or that can access an array of different Italian wines, I would suggest them to try something new. Not necessarily all the wines that are available are liked by everyone, because some of them has got a very definite personality. Something quite particular sometimes, but at the same time, it's absolutely worth to try to discover new treasures. And Italy, by the wine point of view, is exactly the country that gives you the possibility to do so. And this, to me, for many different reasons, and I would say geographical and historical reasons as well. Geographical, first of all, because you've got to remember that Italy is a country that is very extended in terms of latitude from north to south, and it's a very hilly and mountainous country. So there are many different environments. Of course, the climate from the north, it is different from the climate in the south. And there are many different sites, heights above the sea level, sun exposures, average winds in all the sites where the grapes have been planted. And all these differences, they have been exalted by the local producers. They have tried to well, they have realized actually which were the grapes that were more interesting for them, which were the grapes that could give the best results, and they have exalted their features. Of course, in Italy, there is even the possibility to produce fairly good wines, even with international wine varieties like Cabernet and Merlot.
Yes.
But one of the greatest achievements of the Italian wine production has been to valorize these differences. I was talking about even historical reasons about that. Consider that Italy has become a whole country only in 1861. The nowadays regions, before they were countries on their own. Tuscany, just to make an example, it was a single country. So there were customs, there were borders, there were difficult communications. Remember that along the Italian peninsula there is the backbone of the Apennines, of the Apennine Mountains. So if you want to go on the opposite side, it's anyway complicated. Well, anyway, there have always been links, commercial and cultural links, even with the common language. But any area has developed its own gastronomic tradition. In Italy, you will never say ristorante italiano. You will say a Tuscan restaurant, a Piedmont restaurant, a Sicilian restaurant, whatever, because the different cuisines, they are the mirror of such a tradition and such a history. For the wine, of course, it's the same. And this heritage, this richness of differences lately has been exalted. You were asking me about grapes that might be interesting.
Well, just to make, I know it's impossible because there are so many. I mean, also that I'm discovering every time I write an article, I discover something new. But I mean, just to make a small, some examples.
Some things that I like.
Mm.
Okay. Well, an region has got its own speciality. Many times, foreign wine lovers think about Italy mainly in terms of red wines. But this variety is something you can find even in white wines.
Mm.
Let's start from the north. Everyone might think about Nebbiolo, Barbera, and Dolcetto, that are the three most famous grapes of Piedmont. Kind of thing that I really like. There is even another local specialty that is the Grignolino, but it's more rare to find. I've had some of them that were really enjoyable, but I'm a very big fan of an unknown kind of grapes called the Pela Verga.
Ah, sì, sì.
There is a DOC dedicated to it, Verduno Pela Verga. Verduno is one of the small villages of the Barolo production area, but they have these grapes that is very crisp in terms of tannins, with a good acidity, very fragrant flavors of flowers, and especially it's very peppery. It's we might define it a perfect summer red wine, because anyway it's mouth-filling, because in terms of flavors it's really intense and it's even quite smooth after all. But it has got such a fragrance of flavors that it's really rewarding, and the acidity makes it really easy to drink, and when it's hot as well. First thing that comes to my mind. Let's move to Veneto. Well, go to Veneto. Everyone thinks about Amarone, of course, but people must remember that Valpolicella is a really fascinating place, because with the same grapes, the same blend of local varieties, Corvina, Corvinone, Rondinella, Molinara, and seldom even others, you can have very powerful and full body wines like the Amarones, but at the same time, wines more easy to drink, like the base Valpolicella or the Bardolino. There are some fruity examples, absolutely enjoyable. In Veneto, we shouldn't forget even the Garganega, that is the base grape for the Soave wine.
Ah, sì, è vero.
The Soave is a great wine. There is a distinction that has to be made between the plain Soave and the Soave Classico. It comes from the most historical production area on volcanic soil that give the wine a big depth, a big minerality. The great Soaves are really salty, really mineral. On slopes, very steep, very well exposed, the wine gets fullness, but it's incredibly easy to drink, and it has got a very important potential for aging. There are many white wines that have got a very good potential for aging. Going east towards Austria and Slovenia, talking about whites with aging potential, we cannot forget Alto Adige, of course, and especially Friuli. In Alto Adige, they have local varieties. People abroad think that the Gewürztraminer comes from Alsace, but it's not true. The Gewürztraminer, it's an Alto Adige variety. And there are some really good examples, some selections that are absolutely beautiful, with a very good balance despite of their fullness, of their fruitiness. In Friuli, there is the very much undervalued Tokai, that lately must be called the Friulano, not to be confused with the sweet Tokai from Hungary, that is made with completely different grapes and, of course, in a completely different way. The Tokai is an incredible, I would define it a foodie wine, because the Tokai absolutely gives its best when you match it with the proper food. And but Friuli, they've got plenty of things. They've got the Malvasia Istriana. They've got the Vitovska in the tiny hamlet of the Carso, very close to the Slovenian border, on a very poor soil. In certain places, they've got just kind of 20, 30 centimeters of soil before the stones. It's a really fascinating place with vineyards. That really, it's hard to survive from them, but you see the sea in the distance, and then, well, I match the flavor of these wines with the saltiness of the sea close by. And of course, we shouldn't forget the Malvasia Istriana, still going on the rides, that some Friuli Venezia Giulia producers brought to incredible heights with long macerations of the white grapes on the skins. They have made kind of so-called orange wines, and some of them.
I was just about to ask about that. What do you think? What do you think about orange wine?
Well, something extreme. Well, it's something that you've got to refocus yourself when you drink an orange wine. You cannot expect the ordinary white. With the same ribolla gialla that is used to make the most important orange wines of Friuli, there are other enjoyable sparkling wines, still wines made in a more common way. But when you drink a real orange wine, actually it has got the mouth that in a blind tasting you could think that it's the mouth of a red wine. Really full, and so even the way you enjoy them is completely different. Said that, orange wine.
Now he's pouring orange wine.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
I mean, you smell this wine, it looks like brandy at the nose. It's got an incredible complexity. Dried fruits, walnuts, almonds, a mineral character, white flowers, yellow flowers, all these things together. It's not the ordinary white wine. It's something more and different. I don't want to say it's better. I'll simply say it's something that you enjoy in different ways and different circumstances. This is exactly what I want to do now. Because remember, the life of the sommelier is really hard. Always training, always getting updated. So sure.
True. And Livio, what do you think about orange wine? What's your perception?
I love some of them. I not necessarily enjoy all of them, even because there are even other producers that have played to make the orange wines. And many times it includes organic production or the so-called natural production, kind of wine making that practically in the cellar doesn't make anything. They let the grapes go on their own. After all, you always have white grapes vinified like red grapes, so it's something quite extreme. The success and the trend of this wine has convinced many producers from all over Italy to try something similar. Sometimes it has worked, not always. The good examples are really fascinating. There are wines out of the box. There are some great trailblazers, but it's anyway a trail that is not easy to follow. And despite of the fact that many producers have tried to, not all of them have been able. It's something really fascinating, and I absolutely love the good orange wines that to me have got an incredible aging potential. But,
I didn't know that.
But at the same time, I've even had other things that to me, to my personal taste, I mean, in terms of balance, aromatic complexity, and even cleanliness of the wine, are really hard to do. And it's not an easy path to follow, but the good examples are astounding. They're great. Astounding, sorry. They're really great. Just my opinion, of course.
What did you say they were called?
Beg your pardon?
What did you say?
I love this wine. I love this one.
Okay.
I love the good examples of these wines. To me, they are great.
Okay.
The good examples.
Okay.
Not all of them are that good.
Mm. No, but did you say a specific name of a wine?
The historical
producer?
name for the orange wine is Josko Gravner. I had the pleasure to know him, to visit the winery. I appreciate even some whites of Stanco Radicon, still in Italy, of course.
Radicon.
Even some producers in this tiny but absolutely interesting Carso region are very, very interesting. I enjoy their wines very much, whites and reds as well. And I'm talking about, I tell you them in alphabetical order because all of them, they make great wine. So I say Skerk, Vodopivec, and Ziderich. And all of them are great. They are things to be discovered and you find them in a good wine shop. I mean, not in all the wine shop. They are kind of trendy wines. They are not necessarily the cheaper things you might find because it's not easy to make an orange wine, so it costs a little bit more than an ordinary white. Their productions are tiny. Some labels are produced just in a few thousand bottles, but you find them in certain wine shops, and they are definitely worth a try.
Okay. Cool. So any other grape varieties that you thought were interesting to mention?
Well, there are many I love.
Well, just a small selection.
Small selection. Piccoli. No, I'm not very much for the Piccoli.
No.
I've had some of them fairly good, but if I think about, well, of course, I don't want to say that I taste Piccoli every day. Piccoli, for people that do not know, is a white grape. Again,
Gregory here is asking about Corvina and Grechetto. So do you think they are usual or a bit unusual? Corvina is very usual.
Corvina, it's usually in Valpolicella. Valpolicella makes a huge production that now it's very famous, but you do not find Corvina anywhere else. Grechetto is something particular because it's a white grape that is slightly tannic. There are whites made with 100% Grechetto that are slightly tannic and with an almondy aftertaste. They are quite full. Slightly almondy, white flowers, kind of things this way. But it's a full white, easy to drink for its acidity, but it's not the lighter white you can find in Italy. And there are some really good examples, especially at a very cheap price from Umbria and from Lazio as well. From Umbria, I remember a selection that is called Sassi d'Arenaria from a Serrano Falco producer named Di Filippo. And even in Lazio there are some really good examples. There is a producer in Civitella d'Aglianico, which is his name. I do not remember it in this moment, but he made a special Grechetto made in oak, the Burgundian style, called Sergio Mottura. Now I remember the name, like the famous chef. He's got an incredible underground cellar in a tiny village, quite nice to visit, named Civitella d'Agliano, and he makes this wonderful Grechetto.
There's a new who have joined us. I will just explain what we're talking about. So hello Marla, today we're talking about grape varieties with Riccardo, who is a sommelier here from Livorno and serial drinker, and I think Marla likes that. So he's talking a bit about his favorite grape varieties around Italy, which are a bit less known. So if you have any questions, just ask. Okay, you can continue.
So let's go a little bit more far south, even in regions that maybe they're not the first thing that comes to mind. talking about Italian wines. Even in Lazio, there's something interesting. Lazio, the region of Rome. So let's go on the Tyrrhenian side first. In Lazio, I enjoy really very much. Just to link to Mottura, that is in Lazio, in the Viterbo province. In Lazio, I enjoy very much the reds made with the Cesanese grape. Cesanese is definitely probably the wine variety from Lazio that can give stunning wines. There are users that they make single crews of Cesanese. I mean, they have like in Burgundy, they have single vineyards and they make tiny selection, tiny in terms of amount of the production, just a few thousand bottles from different vineyards. Some of them are fairly good, the Damiano Ciolli and so on. The Cesanese usually it reaches quite high level of alcohol, but this alcohol is always well balanced by a good acidity. It's nicely fruity. It's got a very immediate fruit with crisp tannins and kind of spiciness at the nose that makes it very easy to recognize. But once again, what is really enjoyable is the impact, the immediacy of this fruit in the mouth, and at the same time, the depth that you can discover in certain wines, the elegance of the tannins, and the easy drinkability. Let's go on the Tyrrhenian side. Okay. Let's go to Campania. Campania is great. Campania, the region of Naples. Campania is great because you can have wonderful whites and wonderful reds as well. I love them, and especially to me, in Campania, there is one of the greatest Italian red grapes, absolutely undervalued, that is the Aglianico. That is not so popular abroad because maybe for the English-speaking wine lovers and even for the Japanese wine lovers, the GL is not so easy to pronounce. Aglianico, like aglio, that means garlic in Italy,
But I read the other week in an article, because usually they say that Aglianico is the Barolo of the South.
Not exactly.
Then somebody had like that. Yeah, somebody had written that the Barolo is the Aglianico of the North.
The Aglianico is the base of the powerful and great red of the South. That is the Taurasi. That is it has been the first DOCG of the South. That is a powerful, stunning red with incredible potential for long aging, in the sense that of certain producers now you can drink wines of the 60s, really. And so someone says that the Taurasi, this Aglianico-based wine, is the Barolo of the South, and in the area, in the province of Avellino, Taurasi is the name of a tiny village. They say this is not true. It's the Barolo that is the Taurasi of the North. Something like that. It's a great wine. But the Aglianico, some way, it's even something more than the Nebbiolo. Something more in which sense? It has got the same incredible tannic structure of the Nebbiolo. It is as acidic as the Nebbiolo, so it has got a great potential of aging. But comparing to certain Nebbiolos, it's a little bit more colored and even a little bit more smooth. Comparing to the Nebbiolo, maybe it's less perfumed, but it has got some definite hints. The Aglianico is absolutely peppery, white pepper mainly. It smells of flowers, and there are certain Taurasis that this is quite funny because they look some way like a Syrah of the Côte Rôtie in France. They have a kind of olive hint, something like that, or if you prefer, I think probably the most easy to describe thing that can be associated with that specific hint of the Aglianico are olives. Let's imagine you are walking in an Italian food market and you see these big mountains of the Cerignola olives, the big one from Puglia, the kind of olives that you do not use to make the olive oil, but you eat them. And they've always got that special smell, the smell of their liquid and so on. And this is something that you can find here. It's really fascinating. It's really a character very easy to recognize. But being the Aglianico a great grape, heading south in Basilicata on the slopes of the dead volcano Vulture, there is the Aglianico del Vulture, and the Reserva is another, the OCG, that is more fruity, in some way more smooth, smells of chocolate, more spicy, more black fruit, and so on. Being a great grape, the Aglianico might change depending by the place where it is located, like the Nebbiolo, like the Sangiovese, and like all the great grapes of the world. And there is a Brunello di Montalcino producer quite well known, that is named Gianfranco Sollera, a very famous producer, beloved more for his wines than for himself, because it's a kind of rough guy. You can get him in the right day, it's a bit hard. But he uses to say that in the world only 4 kinds of grapes exist. And they are Pinot Noir, Sangiovese, Nebbiolo, and Aglianico. It's a little bit extreme, but all of these 4 grapes, of course, can give great wines. They are not the other one. They are not the other one. But I love Aglianico.
Okay.
I'm a really big Aglianico fan. Every time that...
Well, me too. I like it a lot.
Beg your pardon? You love Aglianico?
Me too. I like it a lot.
Great.
Yes.
Every time that you're tasting there is an Aglianico available, I always go straight there. I like it very much.
Yes. So what do you think? Do you want to mention any more, or do you want to talk more about...
Well,
you have some idea about the international wines?
There could be many more. Even in Campania, talking about wines, there might be the Fiano, the Fiano di Avellino, the Greco di Tuco, and so on. I think it's better to stop because I fear to look like a telephone guy, something like that. And this is not fair. I think it is more important to discuss the way these wines are perceived. Sometimes for foreign consumers, for foreign wine lovers, apart from the availability of these wines, luckily now there are importers that have understood that there is a part of the world wine market that enjoys trying something new. And so this has made these wines, in some way, trendy sometimes and more easily available on foreign markets. Even if you've got to consider productions are relatively small. I mean, there is wine to export. Even because all Italian wineries mainly rely upon foreign markets, because nowadays Italian internal consumption is not enough to cope with the amount of wine produced in Italy. But anyway, we are not talking about the amounts of Cabernet and Merlot that you can find in the wine world. After all, these make them something easy to recognize as different, and so when you realize you enjoy something new, this can be a plus. And this relating to the grapes we have mentioned it, but even to many others. Said that, what I would like to underline is that wine lovers have to be open-minded relating to these different wines. Not necessarily they will love them all. There are some of these wines that are, how can I say, some of these wines can be enjoyed because they are acidic. Some of them because they are smooth, some of them because they are powerful and tannic, and others of them because they are exactly the opposite. In Italy, you can find any possible style of wine. So, not necessarily all the people will love them all. Even depends by the circumstance, it depends by the food you match the wines with, and so on and so on. At the same time, of course, if you are used to a certain style of wine, in the sense, especially people enjoying the wines weighed in the so-called international style, the wine that are alcoholic, light, smooth, oaky, dark, fruity, overripe, and whatever. When you try some of these wines, you might get disappointed. You've got to be open-minded and to understand that if you are able to approach something different, you can be hugely rewarded. Because you've got to be acquainted to something different. But when you are, these wines are of incredible satisfaction, many of them. And if you think about food and wine pairing, because after all, Italian wines are mainly made for food and wine pairing, whatever the kind of food, you can always find something that works with them. Always. Because in Italy there is any kind of style of wine. Absolutely. I could bet it.
So what's your impression? How do you think, if you look upon foreign people, how do you think they so far think about the more rare or the more different Italian wines?
Well, I've got to say, I had an impression, kind of a positive impression, because I'm quite often in contact with foreign people leading wine tours. Most of the guests I guide are mainly Americans, but not only. And I can see differences between what happens now and what happened 10 years ago. What I mean, first of all, the wine purist is something quite strange, quite hard to define. I mean, especially in Tuscany, most of my tours, of course, I live here, so most of my tours are in Tuscany. Not only there, but mainly in Tuscany. And you've got to consider that Tuscany is a brand. Because for a foreign visitor, Tuscany is something that maybe he or she has been dreaming of for a lot of time. And Tuscany is the art, the history, the art of the cities, the countryside, the sun in September, the cuisine, and the wine. The wine is part of that. The wine is part of the brand. The wine is part of the image foreign people have of Tuscany, in particular, and Italy in general. And this means that if you come to Tuscany or Italy, I mean, if you go to the Caribbean islands, even if you are not particularly interested to, you wear a mask and you go to swim to see the colored fish in the sea. But it's something that you have to do in the Caribbean islands. You come to Tuscany, you must do something related to the wine. Something that you cannot lose. And this means that there are people that when they book a tasting or they book a tour, they simply want to have a good time in a good place, in a panoramic place, relaxing, eating something good, enjoying a glass of wine, and that's all. This is a part of the wine tourism. At the same time, there are people that are more interested to the way the wine is made, that want to know something about that. There are the wine geeks that read Wine Spectator, know the ratings of the wines, want to visit the special winery, and they ask you questions about malolactic fermentation. Wine purist, the wine purist is everything.
Yes,
These
I know.
two extremes and everything in between. Said that, I realize that maybe 10 years ago, there were American tourists visiting the Tuscan winery saying Chianti Classico, they enjoyed everything, but when you ask them which was the wine they had enjoyed more, and then they said the super Tuscan wine made with an international blend, the things that was more similar to the kind of wines they're used to drink at their home. If you ask the same question now, it's completely different. Because maybe the wine that they enjoy more is the Chianti Classico Riserva. And this, to me, the drinking habits have changed. Now, more and more, the foreigners, and the American in particular, they have learned to enjoy wine, drinking it while they are working. So not only the fullness and the volume, the smoothness, the ripeness of the wine is important in assessing the quality of the wine, but even its drinkability, its balance, its capability to match with the food. Other qualities like balance and acidity and the velvet texture of the tannins, they have become more important. They are starting to appreciate such qualities in the Italian wine. This to me is a great problem.
Well, also they start to appreciate wines that are not only in barrique. And a mix of Cabernet.
That can be.
Sauvignon,
that can be in the sense there are just, as far as my experience, that are just a few people that are really concerned about the fact that the wine has been aged in barrique or not. There are some people.
No, they might not be aware of it, but I think they start liking wines that are a bit different,
That's true.
as you said.
That's true.
But they might not be aware that there's a difference between.
There might be not. Some people they do not bother actually, but anyway, consider that the problem is not the barrique. The problem is that the use you make of the barrique.
No, that is true. That is true.
As long as the barrique has been used as a tool to craft the kind of wine more similar to the idea of the international taste that the producers had, the barrique has been not anymore a tool. It has become a goal to reach. That kind of smoothness, that kind of oakiness, and so on. Now, luckily, it's different. There are consumers appreciating it, and even more. And this is something that has started, according to my opinion, but probably in the future will increase. There are foreign drinkers that start to appreciate the sense of territory that certain wine gives. They appreciate the fact that these wines are different because they are linked to a territory of production. They are linked to a university. So this is very good because it means they've got that kind of status that consent them to focus on the specific features of the wine, and they do not taste the wine to check if it fits a model they have in mind. Of course, everyone has got his own taste, but at the same time, they start to appreciate the wine on its own for what it actually is. They start to appreciate these qualities, and not only because this quality corresponds to a model they have in mind. This to me is very good.
Okay, so another great blogger from the US has joined us. She's called Jennifer, and she has the Vino Travels here. She has a blog which is fairly read in the US.
No problem. Part of my work.
Yes. And then there was a question from Gregory here. What rare grape varieties are making a comeback or regaining popularity in mainstream wines and in the wine production from the consumers?
Well, this is an interesting question that might have many different answers, in the sense that probably the situation in Italy regarding the success of certain varieties is not necessarily the situation abroad. What I mean is that in Italy, consider that Italy is the only country all over the world where there is local wine production in any region. So in Italy, in any region, mainly people drink the local wine. This is important. So it takes time for for a grape, apart from some classics like the Nebbiolo and the Sangiovese, it takes time to get famous. Some years ago, there was a great revival of the Barbera, even in terms of international wine style, because there were some Barberas that were really loaded with a lot of oak, and they were quite successful. Some of them were very good, not all of them according to my taste. But even the Barbera, saying Barbera is something very generic, in the sense that the Barbera can be many different things. If you get a Barbera Dusty, it's a full body wine with a very good potential for aging. Barbera of certain areas of Monferrato is much more an easy drinking wine, is much lighter, much more straightforward, with such a high acidity that almost looks a sparkling wine. So there are things completely different from each other. Both of them are Barbera, but it's a little bit too much. Apart from that, now I think there is a good trend for some wines from Sicily, the whites in particular, but especially, of course, the wines from the Etna. From the Etna area. You know, Etna is the volcano in Sicily, the highest volcano in Europe, more than 3,000 meters. And there they make very special wines with local varieties that are Nerello Mascalese and Nerello Cappuccio for the reds. So there are many Etnas that are blend of these two varieties. The other Sicilian specialty, Nero d'Avola, is cultivated somewhere else in the island. And
yeah, the Etna is very trendy now.
And even some whites made with another local grape that is called the Carricante. Now they've had a lot of success. They are very popular. You find an Etna more or less in any one bar. And they have become really famous abroad. A master of wine like Francis Robinson has said that the Etna might be the new Burgundy of Europe, just an example. She has written that. She has been astonished by the Etnas. And so they have got a great success. On a more limited scale, there is an interesting white from Piedmont, say a more limited scale because there are less producers doing it, and the production is smaller, but another wine that between the Italian wine lovers is knowing a very good success is the Timorasso. It's a white from Piedmont. Probably many people abroad do not even know that, but there are some Timorassos that can last for 10, 15 years, just like some Etna whites. I mean, some new things that on a different scale probably now are still quite trendy. I would say the Etna, especially the red Etna. Because then you need something special because you've got the vineyards of 100 years old vines on volcanic soils at the height of more than 1,000 meters above the sea level.
Yeah, because there's a
Beg your pardon?
No? Some of them are the pre-phylloxera.
Some of them are pre-phylloxera, yes. Not all of them, but some of them. Some very old vines, bush spring.
Yeah.
And there are some wines that are really great. So Etna is a trend. On a more limited scale, Timorasso is enough to trend. I mean, Italian wine lovers now consider the Timorasso an important wine. But I mean, apart from that, there are some wines that are probably more popular in Italy than abroad. One example, the Verdicchio.
True.
The Verdicchio to me is one of the most undervalued wine in Italy. There are some Verdicchios that are incredible.
Yeah, because I mean, there people that how do you say in Italian when you kind of crimble your nose that it's not a wine to like.
Well, we do not say anything and we skip to another wine. That's what we do. It's what we mostly do.
Because I like the Verdicchio a lot. I think it's
one great thing of the Verdicchio is that you go in a supermarket and you buy a cheap Verdicchio for €4 and it's a decent wine. And not all times this can be said for many other wines with such a low price. Another trend might be some wines from Puglia. We have not talked about Puglia yet. In Puglia there are Primitivo and Negramaro. Primitivo in Italy has had a certain success. Primitivo has been enjoyed by...
But also the Nero di Troia seems to be coming now, that they're producing and selling.
Which one, Nero di Troia?
The
three most important grapes of Puglia are Primitivo, Negramaro, Nero di Troia. They are quite different from each other. I enjoy all of them, but they are very different wines in the sense that the Primitivo, maybe some people already know that it's the same stuff as the Zinfandel in California. It's the same grape. Same one.
Yes.
But now, in late years, we have had a new generation of Primitivo because there have been some producers that have started to exploit the whole potential of even there. I've seen them and they are astonishing. Some very old bush wines, some of them are 70, 80 years old. And of course, there you get a different level of ripeness and the wines gain completely different depth. And there is another area of production of Primitivo apart the classical Salento. Salento is the real heel of Italy. If you see the Italian peninsula as a boot, the Salento is a hill. It's the heel. But a little bit north, in the area of Gioia del Colle, there is it's a little bit higher with calcareous soil, around 150 meters above the sea level, and there just this tiny distance, this tiny difference of 8 makes completely new environmental conditions. The climate is a little bit fresher, and so the Primitivo gets a little bit more depth, and some of them are fairly good. The Negramaro is completely the opposite. The Primitivo is alcoholic, the Negramaro is acidic. The Primitivo, it's colored, the Negramaro has got a color slightly similar to that of the Nebbiolo, not so deep, quite soon it becomes not ruby, but something more evolved, something like garnet, something like that. But there are some really great Negramaro with such acidity and with a good tannic structure. Some of them evolve really well, really well. Some of them can even be smoothed by the barrique because the tannic of the Negramaro is a little bit crisp, so a little bit aggressive when it's young. But there are some examples that has got a wonderfully balanced and important volume now. The Nero di Troia is a smaller production. The Nero di Troia mainly comes from a hamlet in the extreme north of Puglia, but it's a really enjoyable wine for early drinking because it has got a lot of fruitiness, crisp tannins. I mean, they are gritty, but they are not very much, so they dry your palate in a very good way. And the acidity makes it lighter and nice to drink. Even some Nero di Troia can be very nice red summer wine. With the Primitivo and the Negramaro, it's a little bit more difficult. Got to say, remember that especially made with the Negramaro and a local version of the Malvasia blend of Negramaro and Malvasia makes some of the best rosé of Italy in Puglia. Some of them are really great. And they can be absolutely compared with foreign rosés, much more famous abroad, like the Provence rosé from France. The denomination like Liac and Tavel, they are absolutely similar to a Salce Tolentino Dorato. They might be almost exchanged in a blind taste. Oh, there are many. There are many.
Should we ask, because I don't know, we could ask Gregory if he wants to join us. Then he can ask you the questions himself. Do you want to join us?
I'm here, ready for the questions.
So he's coming on air.
Hello.
So this is Gregory from
Nice to meet you.
Britain,
yeah, nice to meet you.
England.
Yeah, I was just trying to catch up on your conversation. One thing I did, which I was quite surprised, the Cleverdon from Alto Adige. I didn't know that. I didn't know. Like everybody else, I thought it was a Germanic or Alsatian varietal.
Yeah.
So is that popular in Italy? You know, in terms of commercial.
You mean Gewürztraminer?
Yeah. Is it commercial style?
Yes. It's very popular in the wine bars because, of course, being so perfumed and being smooth as well.
Yeah.
So for all the people that approach the wine for the first time, it's very appealing. So especially in the wine bar, it's very good. Some women, there is this kind of tradition that say that the Gewürztraminer is the wine for women. Not necessarily. I have certain friends that are women and they drink big reds with a lot of tannins. But anyway, there are some women that in a wine bar they enjoy a Gewürztraminer, or on a smaller scale, let's say a Müller-Thurgau. Even that. I mean, smooth, fruity, and perfumed wine, something like that. But probably they would enjoy as well other wines with this kind of perfume. Of course, the Gewürztraminer, it's an aromatic grape, so by that point of view, can hardly be matched by other wines. But it's quite popular, yes. Absolutely, yes. And the origin is Italian. I mean, Tramin, in Alto Adige, the region close to the border with Austria. Alto Adige is Italian by the administrative point of view, but a part of the population has got a German origin. So it's you've got both languages. Tramin is the German name of a village that is named Termeno, and Gewürztraminer means the aromatic grape coming from Tramin. But Tramin just to indicate the origin of the village, and it is on this side of the Alps. Then it has arrived probably to the Jura in Switzerland, and then it has moved to Alsace little by little. In fact, the so-called Savagnin that they have in Switzerland is a close relative, if I remember well, of the Gewürztraminer. It's the not aromatic version of the Traminer. Of course, then there have been several changes during the centuries, whatever, but they are linked some way in the development of the variety of the Gewürztraminer.
Cool. There's a bit of an echo now, I think.
Sorry.
And which kind of Italian wines you find more often there in the States?
I'm in the UK. I'm based in the UK.
I think there's a lot of echo now. Do you have any headphones?
Because it looks you come from the deep space or something like that.
No, he's in the UK.
Okay,
he's in Britain. Let's see if he has
Okay. So, which Italian wines do you drink more often?
I think he has a lot of echo. So
I was just going to type it, so I wasn't sure if it was going to. But you get a lot of echo there. Shall I?
Yeah.
Shall I look at it again? I'll try that.
Yeah, you can do that. Okay. Okay, so he'll come back. Where were we? His favorite is. No, what did you ask him? His favorite grape variety?
I asked him which kind of Italian wines he could find more easily at his home, and which ones he drank more often. It's interesting.
There was a comment before by Jennifer because she's talking about Italian wine on her blog. So she said that it's always a pity because a lot of these grape varieties or wines they cannot find in the US.
This is true.
So she writes about.
Well, this is true, but this is because the production are small. One defect, one problem of these grape varieties is that they give their best mostly in certain areas. I mean, Cabernet and Merlot, they are called international wine varieties because more or less wherever you plant a Cabernet, you get something. It's not the same with many Italian varieties. So they are strictly linked with their traditional production areas. You find them only there. Productions are smaller. Got to say, if you look a little bit out of the box, a little bit out of the circuit of the biggest wine shops, the biggest franchising shops, etc. If you look for small wine shops that enjoy proposing something brand new, I think even in the States or abroad in general, you can surprisingly find many of these wines.
Okay, so he's back, but I think he still has a lot of echo.
Yeah, it's not good.
This is a space conversation.
Yes. But do you have any earplugs? No. Yeah, that's true. The smaller wine shops sometimes have the more unique wines, while the larger ones have all the same producers.
But to say that anyway, now with the internet, the situation is completely different in the sense that if there is a wine lover that is curious to try a different variety, you can purchase certain wines online. You can get in touch with the producer and you can ask which is his distributor in your own country, just to know which are the places closest to your home where you can find certain wines and so on. Now it has become much easier to find certain wines if you look for them.
Yes. Okay, so I think Gregory is back and he has his earplugs, so there's not a lot of echo. So now he can ask, because Riccardo before asked, which is your favorite wines that you can find in close to your home in England? And now we don't hear him at all.
No, now we don't hear the space, but we do not hear you. Disappear once again.
Oh, this happens with Blab all the time, so it's nothing. Livio is used to it.
Is that okay?
Absolutely agree. I'm reading what
Okay. Yes.
Written. Okay, there we go. Now it works.
Now we hear you.
Yeah. I like a lot of Italian wine. I mean, you have so many wines that there's so many to choose from. I guess I like obviously Tuscan wines because I'm obviously a bit of a purist, but I'm always turned on to new sort of varieties and anything that's unusual. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Get in touch with me. You can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. And when in your favorite wine shop you find an Italian wine that you don't know, you can ask me information about it. If you want, My pleasure to answer you.
Cool.
I think Gregory knows more about French wine.
No. I have sold wines from all over the world. So I've worked for, I don't know if you know, Oddbins Wine Merchant in the UK. I used to be a manager for those maybe 15 years ago. So I have a lot of experience with all sorts of Italian wine. But,
yes, absolutely. I can imagine, but please consider that now, first, how can I say, Italian wine has changed even since 15 years ago. And second, probably even abroad, even where you are, the image of Italian wine, of the Italian wine in general, of the Italian wine world in general, was different from the image that you have now. So probably in that period, only certain wines were imported. Because I know abroad for a lot of time, the Italian wine has been the fiasco in the trattoria with the checkered tablecloth or something like that. Now it's something more. Now it's something more.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of traditional wines for sure, but I think here in the UK, there is a thirst for anything that's new or different.
This is great.
I'd say the range is probably the best it's ever been, you know, even in the supermarkets. Yeah.
So there's another question from Jennifer. She wonders what you think, if the producers are more adjusting their winemaking methods to the market, or if they're staying true to their traditions.
The second. This, I mean, adjusting the wine for the market, probably it was a little bit more true some years ago. Because, with some exceptions, of course, there are so many different wineries and everyone makes his own choice. What I mean is that the average dimension of the Italian wineries is much smaller than in other countries. I mean, in Italy there are many wineries that have got just a few hectares of vineyards. They produce maybe 50,000 bottles and not more than that. So the only way to remain on the market is to make quality, in a very general term, or better, you've got to make a product that is perceived as a quality one by the market to fetch higher prices. Then we have to discuss what this concept of quality is. Of course, in Italy, it is possible to make wine in, say, the international style, over ripeness, smoothness, whatever. But for such small wineries, I mean, this would not be rewarding, because here making wine is more expensive. The cost of labor is more expensive. Many works cannot be made by machines because maybe the vineyards are tiny and they are on bigger slopes or whatever. So their products, they would be anyway more expensive comparing to others made in other areas of the world and with similar organoleptic characteristics. So the only thing you can do is making something unique, again, strictly linked to the territory where you are. Maybe not all the people will appreciate that, but at least you make something that cannot be reproduced any elsewhere. And this makes the quality. People pay for that, pay for the unicity, for the personality. Of course, there are exceptions to this rule, but there are many Italian wineries going in this direction. So much more now than a few years ago. And I think Livio, close to me, owning a wine shop, I think he agrees with me now.
Yes, I agree.
In fact, I wanted to ask if Livio has any questions, because he's a bit silent.
Yeah, no, it's silent because of my fault, because I talk a lot. And that's it.
Oh, man.
I'm really tired tonight, so I'm silent.
Because Livio had a lot of work today. I passed by and he was doing a lot of wine tastings for Americans today. So he has worked a lot. So
did they buy plenty?
Hanno comprato molto.
Yes.
Good.
Well, I still see a lot of wine here on the shelves of the wine shop. In case I can have,
if they bought all
the shelves some way,
okay, later we can try to empty a little bit.
Well, I can see Jennifer of Vino Travel say she's glad to hear such a thing, and I am too, because it's this variety that makes the wine fascinating, especially with the wine in general, but especially with Italian wine, you cannot get annoyed, really. Well, one of the things that has mostly fascinated myself when I have approached the world of wine has been that there are so many things to try, and you've got to be humble because you will never know everything. There's gonna be someone that always knows something more comparing to you, but there's always something new to discover, and every glass of wine, it's a hidden treasure somewhere. And if you have the humbleness to approach it, being open-minded, with the ability to appreciate its own identity, its own differences, this can be really rewarding. I realize that this evening, even because of my poor English, I have used the word differences. I have used the word differences a lot of time, but really, I've done this because this is the truth. The differences are the richness of the Italian wine world.
Yeah.
So there's a Jane, I think she's close to Milan. She follows us almost every week. And last week she told me that she always buys the wine that we talk about. So I don't know, is there any wine you want to mention particularly today? Because then she goes out and buys it to try it, just to try new wines.
Well,
it was a bit difficult to find them last week because we had a producer from Gargano last week, Cantina Losito. And they just started bottling last year, I think, so their wines are very difficult to find.
It would be nice to try. Well, my only problem, if we want to define it a problem, is that being in Tuscany, I mostly drink Tuscan wines, so I'm very eager to try wines from outside every time I can. But I love Tuscan wines. It was funny because a few minutes before coming here in Livio's wine shop, I was close by in the Basilica of San Lorenzo in Florence, where there was an event hosted by Chianti Classico. There was an auction to collect funds for the restoration of the bell tower of the church. And there was a possibility to purchase Chianti Classico, and I said, I've already done this. I'm okay with that. I don't want to purchase some more Chianti Classico. I'm done with that. I tasted, of course, even holding seminars for the Consorzio. I taste Chianti Classico very often. Probably it's the wine I taste more often, but I haven't got sick of them yet, and I think I will never get sick of them.
So if you would name a wine, a Tuscan wine that is not the typical Chianti Classico to Jane, that she should try?
Depends by what you're looking for.
So do you prefer a white or a red? Let's ask her. She's more for white wine.
Side, I have two suggestions, mainly, or we might say even three. Well, the most obvious suggestion is the Vernaccia di San Gimignano, another absolutely undervalued wine that has got very good potential for aging. Some Vernaccia are surprisingly good after 5-6 years, some Vernaccia Riserva. There are some producers working fairly well, and I realized Vernaccia is a wine, Vernaccia di San Gimignano, because you know there are several wines that in Italy are called Vernaccia. Vernaccia, practically it's a word that comes from the Latin vernaculum, that means local. So when you see the name of the wine, Vernaccia of something, it means the local grape of that place. So there is Vernaccia di San Gimignano, Vernaccia di Oristano, and even some others. Anyway, talking about Vernaccia di San Gimignano, when I tasted the brand new release of the new vintage in February, the wines were almost undrinkable because they were still completely upside down. Maybe some of them hadn't finished the malolactic yet. This is demonstrated me in a very good vintage like 2015. The Vernaccia shows even more its potential for aging. I hope that tasting them once again collectively after 4 months, I will have the possibility to appreciate the potential of this vintage even more. So first, some good Vernaccia of San Gimignano. Second, a Vermentino. Vermentino is a grape that you even find in Sardinia and even in the south of France and in the Corse Island with the name of Rolle. It's the same thing. In France they call it Rolle. The Vermentino to me hasn't developed its full potential yet. It's a very interesting white grape because on its own as a varietal feature it's smooth. It's got a good volume in mouth. In fact, you hardly find a Vermentino made in oak because it's quite smooth in mouth anyway. It doesn't need to increase its volume with the oak. But it has got a good acidity as well, so it's always well balanced. And in very hot years, when the other whites might be a little bit flabby, the Vermentino, it's almost there, almost well balanced, and it's even more ripe of flavors than usual. There is a big difference from the Vermentino made in the so-called Costa Etrusca in the province of Livorno, in the Bolgheri denomination, and the Vermentinos made in the north of Tuscany, close to the border with Liguria. Even in the Cinque Terre there is a lot of Vermentino. There, the most important denomination is Colli di Luni. Colli di Luni is a DOC in between Tuscany and Liguria. There are some producers in Tuscany and some producers in Liguria. And if you like whites, really crisp, salty, mineral, and even with good potential of aging, a Colli di Luni Vermentino might be a good choice. Third, and more difficult to find, some Ansonica. Ansonica is another grape, is the same thing that is called Inzolia in Sicily. There is a little bit of Ansonica in the islands of the Tuscan archipelago, Elba and Giglio especially, and a little bit on the coast. Ansonica is not so fit for long aging, but it's quite perfumed. It's almost an aromatic grape in terms of flavor of white flowers, straw, a little bit of aromatic herbs and so on. And there are some versions made especially in the Isola del Giglio, from the Giglio Island, made from very old vines that are really interesting, but they are hard to find. Some advice is about Tuscan wines. Apart from that, going back to the international varieties, all over Chianti, there are some pretty good Chardonnays made in Burgundian style. More than one. First one that comes to my mind is Oleolena. I still remember an Oleolena Chardonnay brought by the producer. I had the pleasure to know Paolo De Macchio of Oleolena. It was a Chardonnay, if I remember well, it was 99. Tasted 2-3 years ago. I think it's one of the best 10 whites I've drank in my life. If not one of the best 10 whites, one of the best 20 whites. That's my opinion of course.
Okay.
99, I do not remember exactly the year, 99 or 2009, but anyway, It was an old vintage. If I remember well, it was 99. And it's funny because in that winery they planted the Chardonnay because of a mistake. Because they had to plant a new vineyards. They had ordered vines of Cabernet, but there was a mistake of the nursery, so they sent them a Chardonnay. When they have planted it and it has made the fruits, they called it. I tell you, this is not black grape. But at that point, they had planted the vineyards, so they started to make the Chardonnay, and it's very good. It's really, really good.
Ah, cool. So if you should name a producer of the Ansonica?
Ansonica, from Isola del Giglio, there is a funny producer, a funny guy named, his estate is named Altura. And there is a small cooperative making a tiny production that I've had the occasion to taste in a recent event, but it's something you practically find only on the island. There is even another producer I have written about.
Because in Lucca I tasted one producer from Giglio, but I also made a Passito, which was very good. I don't remember
Lucca, the name. I do not remember the name as well, but that one was pretty good. Yeah? And I apologize if I do not remember the name. I've even written about it.
No, but I don't remember either.
I've even written about it in an article for a website, but that day I tasted 90 wines, so I apologize if I do not remember that. The name of the wine is funny because it's called the Santio. That it might be translated something like, "Hey guy, listen to me," or something like that. Just like when you're talking to someone and you try to attract his attention, something like that. On the Tuscan coast, and not more on the island, there is another producer making a good Ansonica, a simpler one, made in stainless steel, called La Parrina. And seldom it is possible to find another good Ansonica, very fruity, made in the Elba Island, from an estate called the Cecilia, female name. These are the first Ansonicas coming to my mind.
Wasn't it Cecilia also in Lucca?
Cecilia, maybe it was in Lucca. In Lucca, I would say I tasted everything, but I did not, even because I am quite slow in tasting, because I chat with producers, I read a lot in terms of tasting notes, etc. I'm not the fastest taster that you can find, but I try to fix something about the wine, and when I have time, I copy all the tasting notes that I have written on the computer. So something remains, and I have the possibility, the opportunity to think again about the wine. I remember them. I realized I remember certain wines even after several years. And what is better or worse, even some producers remember me after several years. So that is quite strange.
Cool. So, are there any other questions, or perhaps we should round up this Blab for this week? It's been very instructive, and we learned
especially a lot of different grape varieties. You know, I always like learning about new grape varieties, but also different.
Well, this is terrible because actually I could name many more as interesting as these ones, but I really fear to become a kind of telephone guy.
No,
yeah, but I think when you're passionate about wine or you're interested in wine, it does not seem like a big problem. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
As long as you have a glass of wine in your hand, you can talk all night.
No, I tell you, it's even worse, because I know wine lovers that they can go on talking about wine for hours without drinking anything. You know when you start, but you don't know when you finish.
Yeah.
Really.
But poor Livio is very tired tonight, so I think.
Livio, and after we tell me all the silly things I have said.
Yeah.
Okay. No,
it's
there
all
was
good.
No silly things. Anyway, I think there's another guy coming in. Let's see who it is, if he wants to make any questions. A digital nomad. Okay, hello, Mark. I think we just end it here. It was very interesting, as I said, and I think we all learned a lot. So thank you, Riccardo, and thank you, Livio, who was a bit tired tonight. But anyway, I think it was very nice, and it was very interactive. We weren't that many people today, but it's May, and it's end of May, so I think people prefer to stay out for dinner or for drinks.
With a glass of wine in hand, so they experiment. We talk and they experiment.
Anyway, there will be the replay, so we will kind of I will hook it up to YouTube later on. So thank you, Riccardo, thank you, Livio, and then Gregory, and everyone who participated. And next week, I think we will have Matteo from Fattoria di Fibiano, if his connection works. So I will get back to you with more info about that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.